Right then, so it's time to look at Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer issue number 2. And we can see from the front here, we're going to get another adventure obviously, but we're also going to now have spellcasting, explain a bit about a rogue, and it's going to talk about advantage and inspiration. Let's open it up and see what we've got. First up then, we're going to have our next set of dice. You can see it's a lovely gold dice set here. So there's our nice dice set there. So starting off, open up the magazine. We've got our nice little contents there. So we've got some more sage advice, character creation and lore. So here you can see we're going to talk about advantage, disadvantage, inspiration, resting, spellcasting, concentration, create some humans and some rogues, and look at rogue features. And then we're going to look at Forgotten Realms lore before we make our way to the adventure at the back. There you go, the Forgotten Vault. So now we move on to the sage advice, talking about how to play. Starting off with advantage, and it explains the basics of advantage. When you get to roll 2 dice 20s, and you get to pick the highest result and discard the lowest. And also disadvantage, which is completely the reverse. We have to keep the lowest and discard the highest. And roll 2 of the same though, and it doesn't really matter, you can just choose either. It does explain that advantage and disadvantage can be given through skills, spells, feats, etc. But also the DM can opt to also give the party advantage or disadvantage in rolls. And also mentions about the help action, which was covered in the combat guide, so we kind of knew a little bit about what advantage would be coming into this. And we have a new potion here, Potion of Advantage, which surprisingly gives us advantage. So moving on then, now it talks about inspiration. And inspiration is advantage, but it's basically advantage you can save. So they can mark it on the character sheet, it's just a little inspiration box. And just mark to say you've got inspiration, so they can spend it whenever they want to gain advantage. And some other stuff, you can't have multiple, and there's bardic inspiration, which is slightly different, which we'll talk about when we talk about bards. Not sure what issue that is at the minute, but I think it's coming up. And the rule of cool, where you can just say that's such a good idea, it automatically succeeds, no need to roll, which is cool of them to let you do that. And then we move over to resting and hit dice. It does say how it's covered about healing in combat in the combat guide, which it did. And now it talks about rests. You can have a short or a long rest, which is different time lengths. And you don't really do much, and you can use the long rest for healing. But you do risk getting ambushed if the DM feels like it. So turning over, we do now talk more about resting in detail. You heal on both rests, but short rest you have to roll hit dice for it, which you can't regain until you've had a long rest. Long rest you heal as well, but then also gives you back hit dice, so you can regain on the short rest. It talks a little bit about what hit dice you'd use, which if you use the D&D Beyond website that they keep advertising, obviously it's included, otherwise you just have to work it out yourself. And then we move on to spellcasting, starting to explain it slowly. The top tip, if you're unsure about spells, they seem complicated, play as one of the 2 characters who don't cast spells. Or as you'll see when the issue 1 adventure playthrough comes around, just don't cast any spells at all because you don't know how. Moving through the spells then, it talks about using the spells, components, concentrating for spells that need concentration, and rituals for spells. Components and rituals are obviously stuff that we were unsure of after issue 1 because they were mentioned not in detail and it didn't bring them up again. So now we understand more about that. But as we now understand spells, I wasn't expecting to understand it straight away. And we've just finished off the spellcasting section here talking about preparing spells. It gives you the difference between arcane and divine and how wizards and clerics prepare them differently. Talks about casting and armour as well, which is something I didn't realise. I thought wizards just can't wear armour, but actually they can't cast spells and armour unless they're proficient. And resting as well, and here we get to our first discrepancy in the literature. So in another video that is coming out, it talks about the differences between the trial issue and the actual issue. One of the main things that will come up is for the halfling wizards. You can see originally you could have 3 spell slots to cast, and now you can only have 2 spell slots to cast. This official magazine, it says Merovich Farfo can only cast 2 spell slots. And back on the front page it tells us that both our cleric and our wizard both have 2 spell slots, so they can cast 2 spells. Yet here it's telling us Merovich can prepare 3 spells and has 3 spell slots, so he can cast all 3 spells each day. So straight away, the book's telling me he can cast 3, the character sheet's telling me he can cast 2. So I can't tell which one of these is right, to be honest, until we get to a section that talks about halflings or creating wizards, to be honest. And the next difference as well, this explains how to prepare spells. Wizards get their intelligence plus wizard level, whereas clerics get their wisdom bonus plus their cleric level. But it tells us here in the text, Merovich is intelligence of +2, first level, so he can prepare 3. And just checking out his character sheet, under spellcasting, actually tells us he can prepare 5 other spells each day. However, I know the character sheet should be right because they can see his intelligence modifier is +4, so they clearly just made a mistake in the book. Whether that carried over from the previous trial issue 2, or whether it's just they've just looked at wisdom for both characters, I don't know. Right, so moving on to character creation, and the first species we start with is humans. And why not? Because they are the basic sort of species for any sort of generic fantasy. So let's just take a look at these guys. And here now it just gives us general descriptions about humans. It doesn't give any specifics like racial bonuses or anything that they might have. It just says they're very varied. But I'm assuming that humans are just bog standard. They don't have any benefits. That's your normal character. No strengths but no weaknesses. So a couple of famous humans and a broad spectrum. But when we get to the next species, we'll be able to compare and see if it does that or if it's just going to give us descriptions and that's it. And then the first character class to look at in detail will be about the rogue. And this just obviously gives us all the background information about rogues and all the different ways they can vary in stealth and cunning and what the rogues might specialise in. As with the species, we have a little overview of the rogue here, which doesn't really tell you much about what they can do. So it does mention about the thieves' language, so that is the thieves' cant, which lets you know a little bit that rogues can communicate with each other. Something I'll see if any of our party rogues can put to good use. But unlike that, it does actually tell us the features of the class. So first level rogues get a sneak attack, and as you can see there, all you need to do is have advantage or have an ally proximity, and that should give you the benefit of a sneak attack. And then we just get the rest of the details for sneak attacks. So how much damage you do. Luckily on our character sheets they've already generated it enough to tell us it's 1d6, so we don't need a table to start with, only when we level up. And it lets you know which weapons you need to use to be able to do it. All these ranged weapons can do it, although we still haven't had much information about ranged combat. Just this little bit in the attack section there, that's it for now. And now we move on to our lore section, which is now the Forgotten Realms. So while last issue we looked at Phandalin, we're now going to look at the actual continent of Faerun, which is contained within the Forgotten Realms on the Earth-like planet of Toril. And here's more detail about the rest of the Forgotten Realms as well. Although it does mention in the previous page, most of the adventures in D&D Adventurer are going to be in Faerun, such as today's encounter, the Forgotten Vault. We also get here mention of Red Wizards, which as far as I'm aware hasn't been mentioned so far in the issues, so I wouldn't really know much about them. I would just assume they're Final Fantasy characters. Although I did see the D&D film, which has a Red Wizard there, but again, I still don't have a lot of knowledge about them, to be perfectly honest, so I need to look it up a bit more. And then yeah, so moving on to the Forgotten Vault encounter number 2. And as it says, it's for DMs only, so if your players plan to play it, skip ahead to the next section. Read on the intro text, we can see it's going to take place in the Neverwinter Wood. But the encounter actually begins in Phandalin again. It says you can use the pre-generated characters if you wish, but actually has no mention of the previous encounter, so it just assumes you've done it. There's no continuing story here from what I can see. So to begin, the encounter is quite simple. It's going to tell you how to get there, what happens when the players arrive. It just starts going through. You've got your map here for the DM. You've also got a map on the back, which is actually something you can give to the characters. Whether you'd photocopy or just rip off the page, probably photocopy it though, because it's got information on the back you'd need. And then the last 2 pages up here is just going to give us the rest of the encounter, what happens when it ends, and give us the 2 monsters we're going to find. A lot of material monsters to fight, if that makes sense. Also mimics the first surprise. Can't wait to see how many adventurers grab at least one of the 3 or 4 that are included. Also again, as I've just noticed earlier, ending the encounter doesn't mention anything about leading on to the next encounter or anything about experience points or so on. So everything we're getting now is a literal one-shot adventure. So I'm assuming in later episodes we'll just automatically get given level 2 character sheets to use if we don't want to make our own characters, which would be quite good. And that's it for the magazine maps anyway, until we add the map that came included with it too. This looks quite big, so let's open it up and check it out. So the map is only single-sided. See the plain red back. It is a nice thick material map, so it's quite good. And you can see here it's an entire world map, so I'll still have to find what I'm going to make do if I want to use any character models for the small encounters. But if I need any world map movements, such as in this issue, I've got the map to do it, which might be able to link up with issue 3 when I get the acrylic characters, but also I could use any standee for a party moving. But as you can see, it's got the key down here for everything, and then we're just looking at the area around Neverwinter Wood at the moment, with Phandalin down here, and a couple of marked bits like Neverwinter, Mount Hotenow, there's the ruined villa, there's the elven crypt. So obviously we've got some adventures, and then we've got the Dead Knock Mine and the observatory, and Icespire Peak, Star Metal Hills, which is just over there. But so these must be a couple of the places that we're going to visit in all the upcoming adventures. And we can go to Leylon to visit the Mayor of the Dead Men. We've even got our hex scale written. 1 hex is 5 miles. And knowing we can move about 24 miles a day according to the book, means we do about 5 hexes movement across the map. So quite good you got this. You can plan out when your party's going to do adventures and long rests and so on. So there we go, that was Dungeons & Dragons Adventurer issue 2. As you may have previously seen, issues 3 to 6 have already been delivered, so I can start working on them. I've got number 2 playthrough to do once I've finished getting number 1 playthrough up. And I've got some comparison videos. I've already done issue 1 to issue 0. I'm going to see if I can also compare this issue 2 to the trial issue 2, as I do have some information on that. Either way, there'll be links up to follow the series or follow the magazine. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I hope to catch you soon.